it is your responsibility now as youth that you have to share about India's wildlife, about Indian terrain, about Indian biome, and about Indian scenario. I don't stop saying anywhere in whichever slide talk I give, I tell people how beautiful India is. In fact, just a few days ago, I posted on Facebook saying that when I go to a beautiful location, be it Ladakh, be it Kashmir, be it Shimla, be it Ooty, be it Kullu Manali, be it anywhere, even be it the desert of the Run of Kutch or even the Greater Desert, the LRK as it is called, or the GRK. When I go there, many a times or most often, I hear people behind me passing a statement, अरे कितना ब्यूटीफुल है, अरे क्या झकास दिखता है, इंडिया तो लगता ही नहीं है. The problem is how much of India has Indian or have Indians seen to pass such a, I would say, stupid statement. There are so many fascinating, there are so many beautiful locations in India that one is left spellbound. And you need to see these before they are either destroyed or they are disturbed or there is some kind of a development activity which eats them away. So we have vegetation types in India, we have biogeographic zones in India, the Trans-Himalaya, the Greater Plains, the deserts, the Western Ghats, the Eastern terrain, the coastal region, the mangroves. And that's why I say that without a passport, there is no other country in the world where you can see all these vistas, all these locations without a passport and without any kind of a formality. I'm myself a photographer. I love to take pictures wherever I go, and I'm sharing some of these pictures with you. Look at the beautiful Himalaya. Look at the Valley of Flowers, which you have discovered by the Swiss scientist. And when they said, oh, this looks like almost like Switzerland. And next to that, you have the Hemkund Sahib, which is also present there. And down south, you have Periyar, thick, luxuriant forest. I mean, if you had an elephant standing here, then the elephant would just reach the base of the tree. The height of the elephant would just reach the base of the tree, hiding among the grass. Such thick, luxuriant forest, evergreen forest called sholas, which exist there. And among these sholas, there are some of these developmental projects. For example, the dam which was built in Periyar. And what you see in the center of the lake, imagine this was a tall tree right in the middle of the valley where it was standing. When the water inundated the built dam, the entire roots of the tree got submerged in water. Roots are living entities. They need air to breathe. This air normally they get from the porosity of the soil. But because the water inundated the entire soil, the roots died. When the roots died, the trees also died. So now you have these trunks of the trees which are dead, and these are the mute spectators of what the original forest was there at that time. So this is what India is all about. You have different types of forests. You have moist forest, you have evergreen forest, you have deciduous forest, you have temperate forest, you have broad-leaved forest, you have narrow-leaved forest, and you can go on and on with the classification of forests and so on. Right in the center, you have the Kanha Tiger Reserve, from where one of my ex-student Pranad is here today. Kanha, if you notice, is right in the center of India. Probably if you ask a child to point out on the map of India, put his finger in the center of India, his fingertip would probably be over Kanha Tiger Reserve. This is the place where there is an intergradation, or you can say passing from the western teak forest to the eastern sal forest. Teak is called Sag, G as in globe, and on the east you have Sal, L as in London. So these are two types of trees. I'm not going into the technical names because Aditya sir told me that there will be some commerce and non-science students as well. But in case those who are interested, teak is Tectona grandis. On the east, you have Sal, that is Shorea robusta. Now, why is it important to know? It's important to know because on the west side, teak is a dominant tree of a dry deciduous forest. Deciduous means shedding. We have deciduous teeth, which means we shed our teeth, the milk teeth that we develop in our childhood when we grow into adults. So we have deciduous teeth. Teak is a deciduous, but it is a dry deciduous tree. On the east side, sal is a moist deciduous tree. So when you say moist, when you walk on the forest floor, you will get moisture in the forest floor. That is the advantage of having these kinds of trees out there. And of course, you all know Kanha is world famous for its tigers. It is one of the most successful stories of Project Tiger. And through historical past, through our culture, through our mythology, there are several stories which are there in Kanha. For example, Shravan Tal, where you know about Shravan and mythology. If you don't know, Aditya sir will share the Amar Chitrakatha of Shravan story for you. Back home, a small island of the forest, 12.2 square kilometers in area, is this Karnala Bird Sanctuary, 62 kilometers from GPO Mumbai. And incidentally, I am a proud ex-student of SIS College. I should not forget to say that. My first 2 years of college, in the old college days, it used to be first year in intermediate college, after the 11th grade in Our Lady of Good Counsel High School. So I know SIS pretty well, and I know all the nooks and corners for hiding also around. Don't ask me about that, but ask me about the beautiful places that you have near Sion. And of course, you can go to Karnala Bird Sanctuary. I have made a small booklet when I was doing my master's degree course in Ruia College, where there are 163 birds recorded in Humayun Abdul Ali's collection of birds in the Bombay Natural History Society. And go on a non-weekend and you can see birds which come quite close. You have shamas whistling away, you have Malabar whistling thrush in the monsoon, and in the monsoon you have one of the most beautiful birds of the Western Ghats, the ODKF, that is the Oriental Dwarf Kingfisher. It comes and nests even by the side of the highway, the Bombay-Goa highway, which runs across through Karnala Bird Sanctuary. Some of the most unique things about the plants are these. There is a fern which is called as, you can say, snake tongue fern, though that's not the common name. It's Ophioglossum. Don't ask me where it is, because this is how we tell people about locations, and then people go there and pick up all plants in huge numbers and pickle them in formalin bottles in colleges for people to study. Now we all have a mobile phone. Memories and pictures should only be the things which you come back with, but don't stand at the top of the fort and the pinnacle, putting your life at risk, taking pictures of your own selfies and so on. A lot of people have lost their lives, even at Karnala and other forts of India. So be very careful. While I talk about wildlife, I will also talk about safety rules, because this is a part of observing wildlife. Sir Salamat to Pagdi Hazar. That is what Modi ji also said some time back. So if you are alive, you can have a lot of fun with wildlife, clicking pictures elsewhere and so on. So that is for us, Karnala Bird Sanctuary, one of the most unique places, very close to Sion and very close to Mumbai, which one can go to. 100 kilometers from the stone of Pune is this Revkuri Dry Arid Blackbuck Sanctuary. Very beautiful place. You can see blackbucks out there. The Kerala backwaters teeming with nutrients and adding to a whole biodiversity of wildlife out there, on which not only the locals but also the fishing communities depend. And here is where a lot of nesting birds can be seen. India is also rich as far as its coastal areas are concerned, right from Mandwa in Gujarat all the way down south till the tip of Kanyakumari, and then going down and up into the Sundarbans area. My heart goes out to Sundarbans and to all the people out there right now. More than 1 million people have been evacuated. Please watch the entire cyclonic storm. People are all messaging and telling what is the state of affairs. But yes, coming back to the beauty, these coastal areas have different types of beaches. You have sandy, rocky, and muddy beach. Here you can see a combination of two beach. On this side, you can see a rocky beach, and here is the full sandy beach out here. And these are places which have a rich diversity of different types of flora and fauna all over India. One of the most unique saltwater plant species are these mangroves. Mangroves are plants which are not just found on the beaches if we go to the Run of Kutch or to any salty soil terrain. Run of Kutch, millions of years ago, was sea. It was a shallow sea. Go into the history, look at what is continental drift after this lecture is over, and you will see at least about 130 million years ago, it was a shallow sea, and that's where the salty soil is. And so even in the Run of Kutch, you see some of these very typical salt soil plants which can tolerate the salty soil. So these are mangroves, and they grow quite commonly along the beaches. They grow in shallow regions where the mud is not sandy, but it's clayey. Very important, clay is necessary for mangroves to grow. And that's where many marine creatures come to breed. The reason is very simple, because the water is very shallow, because there are a lot of nutrients. These animals, which are young ones, larvae, and other forms of embryonic stages of animals, which come and breed there, they will get enough nutrients, number one. And number two, very important, they will be safe from large predators, because in shallow waters, larger predators will not venture in there. And then on the west coast of India, in the Arabian Sea, you have these beautiful coral islands. I have been lucky enough to go 7 times to the islands of Lakshadweep. Please do visit these islands whenever possible. It may be a little expensive to go there, but it's worth the trouble. These are some of the most beautiful islands, coral islands in the world. The whitest of the sand of the world comes from Lakshadweep, because the sand is nothing but pure powdered shells which contain calcium carbonate, shells of mollusks. That means animals related to shelled animals like snails and so on, shunk and so on. And the second contributors are white colored corals, which are nothing but skeletons of the corals which get bleached, and once exposed, the calcium carbonate turns much whiter, and once it gets powdered because of the lashing waves of the sea, all that adds on to the white beach. Some of the most beautiful and exclusive animals live here, including relatives of octopus and sepia. These are the pearl nautilus, which is quite an endangered species. And apart from that, you have several species of cowries, worms, and other creatures for which you must read a book by the present director of BNHS, one of the ex-students of Ruia College of Mine, Dr. Deepak Apte. A fabulous book that is. I'm sure Aditya sir has kept it in the SIS College Library. So please make a visit. These are 32 islands spanning an area of 36 square kilometers, and please do visit anytime possible. India is neck to neck with several other countries in the world. Look at Indonesia and Brazil, and we are quite close to them. Out of 4,500 species of mammals all across the world, we have 450. Out of 9,700 species of birds across the world, we have almost 1313 according to Grimmett, 1,313. Out of again 600 species of reptiles, we have more than 500 species in India. Out of 5,000 species of amphibians, we have more than 500 in India. So if you compare the landmass of India, India is just about 2.7% of the landmass, but it has more than 5% of the world's wildlife. 13% of birds are present in India. And that's because India offers a variety, a diversity of habitats, ecosystems, etc. for various species of animals. When you say endemic, endemic means restricted, limited, found only in a narrow, restricted zone, limited zone. You can say endemic to India means found only in India. You can say endemic to Maharashtra means found only in India, only in Maharashtra. You can say endemic to Western Ghats, which means found only along the Western Ghats. So in that sense, endemic to India, we have 8% mammals. Now 8% mammals means 8% of 450, which almost comes to about 35 species of mammals found nowhere else in the world but found only in India. This includes the Manipur brow-antlered deer, the lion-tailed macaque, the black buck, and so on. When I say India, it means Indian subcontinent. It includes Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Burma. I gave this talk a couple of years ago in Switzerland, and I was comparing the geography of Switzerland, the area of Switzerland, that's about 40,000 square kilometers. If you compare that with India, we have 30 million square kilometers. So we are approximately 75 times the size of Switzerland. But are our problems 75 times? No. We have far larger number of species to protect. And in fact, Earth Day, which was celebrated on 22nd of April, we are talking about protect our species every year in the Earth Day, and we are telling people why you need to protect species. The first question which comes to our mind, whenever a layperson is asked, why should you save the forest? What is the answer that you can give? Every bhajiwala, every shopkeeper, every person on the road, if you cannot convince that person that why you need to save wildlife, then it is useless, it is futile. When people ask me, what are the functions of the forest? I say, they are all starting with the syllable F. F, functions of the forest. F stands for fruit, flower, furniture, fiber, fresh air, fertility of the soil, pharmacy. All these are functions of the forest. And then, of course, in English, we have a saying, a thing of beauty is joy forever. Some of the Himalayan flowers that you can see are so fascinating that they leave you spellbound. Every college, wherever there is the biology department and chemistry department, outside that you must have this plant, aloe vera. If there is an acid and alkali which falls on your skin, any corrosive substance, the first thing that you apply should not be Bernol, but it should be the sap from the plucked leaf of this aloe, because that sap has got the function of not just being a cooling agent, but it also has regenerative properties for cells, for building up the cells. And that's why a large number of older generation senior citizen people, they gobble down what is called as potable aloe juice. It's available in shops, in pharmacies. You can take a teaspoon every day, and it helps from dead cells to be rejuvenated or to be rebuilt. So that's the building up property of aloe vera. Very important plant in the Indian subcontinent. As a child, I'm sure your mother fed you with an Ayurvedic medicine which contained powdered fruit extract of this plant. It's called screw nut because a dry fruit looks like a wound up screw. It's brown in color, and many Orthodox Maharashtrian houses keep the fruit in the kitchen. You take the fruit, it's very dry, and if a child has loose motions, then just as you prepare chandan on a plate, on a pata, on a rolling pin stone, in the same way you take the fruit, and depending upon the number of times the child has passed the motion, that many times you turn the fruit around in a drop of water so that the paste becomes more concentrated. In Ayurveda, the powdered fruit is used to treat loose motions amongst children. So the common name of this plant in Marathi is Murud Sheng. Murud means loose motion. Sheng means the fruit, anything which looks like that. So Murud Sheng. Another plant which is quite common in and around the forests of Mumbai is this crab's eye, devil's eye. In Hindi, it's called Rati. In Marathi, it's called Gunza. The red seed proclaims that it is poisonous. Scientific name of this plant is Abrus precatorius. And in nature, something which is gaudily colored, something which is very bright colored, nature is advertising and telling you, be careful, don't touch me or don't eat me. Red colored mushrooms are also the same way advertising that they are poisonous. So these seeds in Gazetteer of Maharashtra is mentioned, 6 seeds are enough to kill a child. In the past, goldsmiths used to use these seeds to weigh gold. Why? Because each seed has the same weight. So on one side of the balance on the pan, they would put these seeds. On the other side, they would put gold, and they would say, Das ratti sona, Bis ratti sona, Tis ratti sona. The same way in which you now say, Do tola, Paach sola, tola, das tola. So tola in those days used to be ratti. One more rule that nature teaches us is that one part of the plant may be poisonous, the other part may be edible. This is a climber, and the leaves of this climber are used by the panwala. When you go to the panwala and say, Bhaiya ji, zara hari patti jada dalna, that hari patti comes from this climber, because that hari patti is good to stimulate digestive juices in your stomach. So it helps in digestion, and that is why it is added in pan. So this is Rati, Gunza, Crab's Eye, Devil's Eye. As I said, a thing of beauty is joy forever. I think one morning Pranad was there in this batch. We were walking in Periyar, and this was I call it as dancing doll, milkweed. These plants have a milky white juice which comes out if you pluck the flower or the stem or the leaf. And these milkweeds are quite common around Mumbai as well. I'll talk about it slightly later. This is a very important plant for the Western Ghats, Karvi as it is called. It flowers once in 8 monsoons. The last flowering was in 2016. Sanjay Gandhi National Park has huge congregations of this plant along the slopes. If you are a hiker or a mountaineer, and if you go to the Western Ghats for hiking, if you are about to slip on a mountain slope, the first thing that will come to your rescue, you will hold, are the dry stem of these Karvi plants. During the monsoon, every 8 years, these flowers appear, and the uniqueness is because in one particular area, all the flowers will have a synchronized blooming, which means all the flowers will appear in the same year. And believe me, this has been my one of the important every 8 year periodic event that I attend to ever since the bug of nature has bitten me. So 2016 was the last. Keep your calendars updated. Next one will be 2024. And you go to Matheran, Mahabaleshwar. At Matheran, I make it a point to go every flowering time of this Karvi. Go to Panorama Point, and I can never forget in 1992 when I'd taken some students there, this mass flowering looked like as if somebody is getting married, and on the valley they have put up these blue and pink bulbs. Bulbs means the light bulbs along the valley to celebrate somebody's wedding. Another important function, I said functions of nature. So another important function is the function of honeybees. Just yesterday, it was the World Bee Day. Okay. Can you imagine? Scientists say that 80% of the edible fruits that we eat are because of the labor of the honeybee. They are doing free labor for us, and because of that, we must appreciate the kind of good work that the honeybees are doing. Now imagine when a person, let's say a minister or a political person, says, how important is the forest? Can you tell me the value of this forest? Unfortunately, economists believe in values only in terms of rokada, in terms of money. So the unfortunate thing is that everything has to be translated into money. Trees, what is the value in lakhs of rupees? The air that the trees give, can you calculate it in value? The meditation value, the yoga, the culture, the mythology, the archaeology, the geology, the land and the soil holding capacity of the roots, the important facility of the flowers, the bees, the insects, the pollination, the seed dispersal, the spiders which are killing all the harmful insects which are very important for us so that we human beings can survive and our crops can be less damaged. All this is done by nature. How can we equate all that? Right now, there is a boiling argument happening all over the world, and especially so in India. Just Google on dams, development projects which are being built all across India, Dibang Valley, Northeast. The Northeast as is at such a major threat. Everywhere they are saying, okay, conduct an EIA. What is EIA? Environment Impact Assessment. Arts and commerce students, please listen carefully. You will all be responsible for this. Why this? Because you will be able to only equate the ecological value and the economic value of a dam. So you'll have to translate all that into money. At that time, all this talk that I'm giving right now, you will have to equate all this action, the forest, the wildlife, the culture, the tradition, the people, the culture of the people. There are these Idu Mishmi tribals who are living there, and their heart is literally crying. They're saying that our souls are going to turn in their graves if the valleys are going to be submerged in water. So please don't just appreciate wildlife, don't just be mute spectators, be a part of the ecological and the economic role that everybody must be involved with, and you must make a hue and cry about everywhere. Aditya sir will share with you where you can voice your opinion and tell people about how all these areas must be saved. Yes, we need to have development, but development and wildlife are two sides of the same coin. Sorry, development and wildlife are two sides of the same coin. One side will surely suffer. But what needs to be done is we need to understand how and how much we want wildlife to suffer. This is what is an important. If we have alternatives, and mind you, always there are millions of alternatives, but there are some vested interests which don't look at these millions of alternatives, and therefore common sense is eroding in India and rest of the world, and people don't want to apply common sense. They want to apply a sense which gives them more money. They want to apply sense which will have more pockets filled, and you know what I'm talking about. This is the problem everywhere. This is a milkweed also. You know, Rui, it's called Akada in Gujarati, Rui in Marathi. On Saturdays, the leaves are offered to Lord Hanuman. And why? That's because people have understood that you need to respect. Put these leaves to a god because the leaves have an antiseptic property. If you have a cut or a wound, you can apply the latex. Latex is the white milk which comes out. But be very careful, be extremely careful. Don't allow the latex to go into your eyes or touch your skin, other parts too much, because it can cause swelling if applied in large amount. Don't put the leaves on the skin. That can also cause swelling. But there are animals which take the benefit of this poison. The leaves, the latex, the white milk contains a poison. And there are these larvae of butterflies which feed on the leaves. Why? Because the females lay their eggs selectively on several milkweed plants, and they decide which plant they each butterfly species decides which plant they want to lay their eggs, because the eggs are laid only on those plants on which the larvae can feed, and they can feed during their caterpillar stages and then become pupae and then become adult. So the entire cycle of butterflies involves selection of plants which will help the butterfly larvae to feed upon. So these are milkweed plants on which the tiger butterfly caterpillars are feeding. And the caterpillars are also poisonous because they have incorporated the poison from the leaf into their body. And the butterfly, the adult itself, is also poisonous. And that's why the butterfly color is orange, black, and white, similar to the tiger animal. And that's why the butterfly is called tiger butterfly. This is not the tiger butterfly. This is a common Jezebel. And the common names of butterflies are quite easy. We have admirals, we have migrants, we have immigrant, we have viceroy, we have commanders, we have sailors. All these names, they are quite common. Just to give you a gist, an idea, in Sanjay Gandhi National Park itself, we have 200 species of butterflies. In the entire of United Kingdom, we have 200 species of butterflies. So this is how we don't respect the diversity that we have in our backyard, and we need to identify, understand the role that they play, and that's how we can develop an appreciation for them. Common rose butterfly, owl moth. These owl moths have a wing pattern. They have spots which resemble the eyes of the owl. The moth also goes and rests in crags, crevices, and underneath the rocks, and that's how they get protection, because owls also go and rest there. And the moment a predator like a lizard or a bird, large bird, comes closer, the owl moth flashes its wings open. Thereby, these spots become open up, and the bird or the predator, before it can decide whether this is a owl, a bird, or whether it's a moth, before that, the owl moth escapes, and that's how the bird is baffled or is puzzled. There are numerous species of moths. There are very few field guides which tell us these species. There are very few common names, but this one has a common name. Okay, it's called as lacewing. But very few moths, but there is an entire family of lacewings. So the unfortunate thing is that most of these moths have scientific names, and that's why very few people delve into the understanding of individual species of moths. They just name the groups, and that's what makes them happy. So this lacewing moth, just half an inch, can you imagine? I had taken the picture with a macro lens, and you can see those mercury-shaped, mercury drop spots which are present on the lacewing and so on. This is a close-up of a silk moth. You can see the powerful antenna that moths have. Insects, incidentally, can detect molecules in the air far away, and that's how these antenna are a very, very strong, very powerful, you can say, detection agents. You can say antenna with which they can come to know about the presence of sugar molecules around nature and so on. And then every insect is well adapted, is well suited to its environment. Some of them have colors, some of them have patterns, some of them have large number of offsprings that they produce so that each one can survive. And this is the law in wildlife. Every wildlife creature has adaptations. Every wildlife creature has got some unique features which helps them to survive. And Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest works very well. So when you say fit, what is fitness? Fitness can be large size. Fitness can be a large number of offsprings. Fitness can be, now I come to it, resistance to some diseases. Fitness can also be resistance to HIV. Fitness can be resistance to coronavirus. Fitness can be anything. So many people say that only those people will survive who are fit and have the antibodies to survive against the coronavirus infection. 97% of people will have the infection but will not develop COVID. Having corona positive does not mean, it's like having the HIV in the body but not showing the symptoms. Symptoms of HIV is in the form of AIDS. So symptoms are different and infection is different. There will be many people in India who will be corona positive. They will have the virus in the body, but they will not show the symptoms. And why they will not show the symptoms? They will be carriers, and because they don't show symptoms, they will be carriers who can pass on the virus to others. The other person may not have the antibodies and they may not have the resistance against the corona infection. So they will develop the symptoms called COVID, and because of that, they can succumb to the disease. Right now, we don't know how many people floating around are corona positive, and they are passing on the transmission to the people who do not have the antibodies and who will develop COVID. and can succumb and can die. This is where the big problem is. People are not understanding that this is also Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. But will we allow the human population to just die like that? That all depends on whether you are a scientist or a philanthropist or a human activist. I'm not going to go into the detail because this can become a big discussion and it can become a big controversy and a debate. So let's go further. But yes, Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest can be seen everywhere, every day around us. One more fit individual here you can see now, and that is the harvester ant. These harvester ants make their nest, okay, making mud plastering during the monsoon time when the mud is quite wet. And they make this nest, elaborate nest, with a central entrance and the walls around them so that not a single drop of water can enter into the center. The central hole leads into a tunnel. The tunnel is straight for a little while. Later on, it branches out horizontally. And at the end of the horizontal branches, there are chambers. So if a drop of water enters into the central hole, it will never ever reach the horizontal branches and will surely never reach the chambers where the ants have stored grains. Ants are laborious. You will remember the famous story that you read in your school, The Ant and the Grasshopper. The grasshopper fiddles away playing music. The ant is laborious, collects grains and stores them in a chamber. And these grains are the ones which sometimes during famines, villagers dig up the nest of the harvester ant, and you can be rewarded with at least 1 or 2 kilo of grains. And if these nests are near agricultural farmlands, the grains would be rice, wheat, maize, jawar, bajra. Any of these grains might be stored out there. And that's how people can avoid being dying because of hunger in those cases. So a very interesting animal. I sometimes use this as an example in animal architecture and how we through biomimicry learn how to make our houses and reform them and plaster them so that we do not have any problem of environmental catastrophes like flooding, etc., etc. Longhorn grasshopper. Look at that. The horns here are nothing but antenna. This is a family, this is a group of grasshoppers. Okay. Several species are there. I'm not going to the details. Tunnel or funnel spider has an equally interesting lifestyle. A predator, it may be not as large as a tiger, but just as a tiger has an interesting life, a spider also has an interesting predatory life in a habitat, in an ecosystem. When you say protect the tiger, save the tiger, it means that right from tiger, you need to save even the smallest of the tiger, of the predator, like the spider, because everything is coordinated, controlled, connected with the web of life. If a spider can die, maybe after a few generations, maybe after a few decades, some spiders and their negligence, death, removal can even harm the tiger. And for that, you must see the video of how wolves have changed the courses of rivers in the United States. Please see that video, very interesting. It will tell you how single species can change the entire domino effect, cascading effect on ecosystems, and thereby other species can go away, can get extinct. So we learn from that every spider, every beetle, every scorpion, every snake, every animal is important in a Project Tiger area. So when you say protect the tiger, it means protect the habitat of the tiger, the ecosystem of the tiger, the biome of the tiger, the forest of the tiger, the entire place where the entire populations of tigers exist everywhere. Tigers today don't exist only in tiger sanctuaries, national parks, which are under Project Tiger. There are several individuals of tiger which are outside tiger geography, and these are called as corridors, which also need to be protected. And in such corridors, there is a lot of wildlife which needs to be protected. When a railway track is being built through these corridors, it is these corridors which are at a peril, which are at a danger. I will give you a very easy example for you to understand. You might have seen videos of elephants walking through villages in Assam, West Bengal, and so on nowadays. My heart goes out to these villagers and the kind of danger that they are facing every day. When did this village come up? This village came up 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What was there before the village? There was a forest. There used to be an elephant. 50 years ago, it was a small baby elephant, a calf. It used to walk through these forests. Elephants can live up to 65, 70 years. A 50-year-old elephant remembers that there was a forest once upon a time, and so she, being a dominant mother hierarchical group, okay, it's a matriarchal family, the female is walking in front, telling all the others, come, let's walk from one forest to another. There is a forest. I remember in my childhood when I was 5 years old, my mother took me through that forest. She walks, and then lo behold, there is a village. So this is what is the entire story. These are corridors, these are forest tracks, old tracks which animals used to use in their old days, which have now become civilizations, which have become villages, which have become towns. Who are to be blamed? You can't blame the elephants. You can't blame the villagers because population explosion has resulted in satellite small towns, villages, and so on. So that's where people need to understand that they have to live when elephants are walking through their villages. You will remember 2 years, 3 years ago, there was a wildlife photography competition by Sanctuary, and we had published the first prize winner of an elephant group herd walking through a village where fireballs are being pushed, thrown at the elephant. I'm talking several things at one time. Western people who are sitting as armchair wildlifers in the United States and elsewhere were passing comments. How can you give first prize to such a photograph? It is so inhuman. Photographer and you people are the ones who are going to tell the world about the existing state of wildlife. A photographer cannot be punished for taking a picture. So somebody wrote on the website, what was the photographer doing? Why did he not stop the villagers? Here is where that person from US must be made to stand when there is a mob attacking animals, mob effect in Mumbai, mob effect in any religious site, and you all know what I'm talking about. A single person cannot stop a mob. He will be trampled to death. So this is the problem. Anyway, let's come back to the funnel spider. Every animal is a story. What I wanted to tell you is that when you tell people and when you try and justify that why is a lot of money being spent by the government on Project Tiger, you can tell them that tiger is just the tip of the iceberg. Under the tiger, in the name of the tiger, in the disguise of the tiger, even the spider, scorpion, beetle, the microbes, the bacteria in the soil, everything is being saved just with the name of Project Tiger. Ghost crab, when you go to Juhu Beach or when you go to Shivaji Park Beach, you will see holes, and outside the holes, you will see radiating sand, small, tiny, round balls. Those are made by ghost crabs, and they make it every time there is a low tide. What they do, they go down, they pick up sand, they roll it into a ball, and they leave it outside. Like this, they go again and again and again every low tide to make a hole, establish its own territory, and because they are so well camouflaged, you call them as ghost crabs. Toads. All of you must be knowing frogs and toads and their difference. For those who don't know, toads have this swellings on their skin, as you can see here. Okay, it's called as warty skin. And then here is the eye. Okay, here is the eye. Behind the eye, here is the eardrum. Okay, this is the eardrum. And behind the eardrum here, okay, this is a gland called parotoid gland. Okay, it's found behind the eyes. This gland gives out a secretion, and that secretion causes windpipe respiratory tract to constrict. So when a dog or a snake tries to gulp, devour a toad, this secretion makes the snake windpipe become narrow. It feels as if it's being choked or suffocated, and so it throws out the toad. This is a kind of a defense mechanism, and this helps these toads to survive. Apart from frogs and toads, there is a fungoid frog found in the Western Ghats, quite common. There are reptiles. Observing, watching, studying reptiles and amphibians, the science is called herpetology. Several people are involved in herpetology. In your gardens, you might see the garden calotes. This is a relative of that called forest calotes. In the month of April and May, the males develop this orange head. The males develop that as a sign of attraction. Olive ridley turtle at Rushiculia. Several species of these turtles. We have all the marine turtles in India, all of them without exception are endangered. The females come to the same beach to lay eggs where once upon a time they were themselves born. The males probably never come to land once they leave from the egg after hatching out and taking to the open sea. Even mating occurs in the air, in the water. Turtles, as you know, breathe air. They need to periodically surface, come to the surface of water, break the water and gulp in air. They are lung breathers. Okay. So this is olive ridley turtle. Large numbers of these come onto the beaches to lay eggs. Monitor lizard is one such animal in herpetology. Let's now go to birds. So I said we have 1,313 species of birds. In Sanjay Gandhi National Park, we conducted a 1-year biodiversity avifauna study, and a lot of people used to participate. Aditya sir used to also come for that, help us. And this was a citizen science initiative where scientific studies are conducted and citizens help in creating a database. At that time, we have published a report. Roughly about 280 species of birds can be seen just in Sanjay Gandhi National Park. If you add the entire city of Mumbai and you add all the flamingos, the waders which are seen at Shivri, Nhava Sheva, Uran, and all these places, if you add all of that, it'll go well beyond 325 species of birds. Once again, comparing with UK, the entire United Kingdom has approximately 300 species of birds. Okay. So little egret, these are relatives of heron. Herons, as you know, this is a grey heron. Right now, I can hear common miners giving alarm calls outside my window. I'm sure there is some lizard or some animal attacking, and that's why if I were not to be conducting this talk, I would have gone out to see why this is there. I remember 2 months ago, I was walking in Bhavans College and I heard these common miners giving an alarm call in Bhavans College in a tree. And I just stood there in the college. It was outside the library, and you won't believe it. There was a rat snake climbing the tree, and the common miners were giving this alarm call because the rat snake was climbing the tree. And then we called snake rescuers and helped to take the snake away and so on. Okay, grey heron, coot. It's called chandi in Marathi because of the silvery white patch. Yellow wattle lapwing. Its other relative, red wattle lapwing, we all know. Flamingos at Airoli. Unfortunately, the slide goes a little quickly away. You can see in a flash. Oh. I don't know, something is wrong with the... here it is. So that's the flamingo. They come in November, December to all the salt pans, creeks, mangroves of Mumbai, and both the greater and the lesser. Some of these might be from Africa. Majority of them are from the Run of Kutch, and they stay here until May, until it starts raining, when the flamingos migrate back and start building their nests out there. Indian peafowl, which is our national bird. My guru, Dr. Salim Ali, was once asked when he said that let's put the Indian peafowl as the national bird of India. At that time, the discussion and the debate was going on whether they should put as the Great Indian Bustard. I wish at that time the Great Indian Bustard was named as the national bird. Probably it would not have gone the way it is, just in the path of extinction right now. But rightly so, at that time, Dr. Salim Ali said, if we name the Great Indian Bustard as the national bird, I'm only afraid that all the press reporters and all the people talking will misspell and will misname and will mispronounce the bird, and it will be a big catastrophe in India. You all know what I mean. Great pied hornbill. Some people believe that this might have been the Jatayu Pakshi which appears in Ramayana. The debate is still going on, but yes, the great pied hornbill is seen in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka in large numbers. It's a huge bird and could have been responsible in fighting even against Ravan and so on. We don't know, but that's one of the debates. Nilgai, one of the antelopes in India. This is an antelope, not a deer. All of you know the spotted deer is the commonest of the deer that we find in India. But Nilgai, blue bull, is the largest antelope in India. We have 4 antelope species in India. The Nilgai, which is the largest, the black buck, became infamous because of Salman Khan, black buck. Okay. Then the third one is called Chausingha, the 4-horned antelope as it is called. And the last one is the Indian gazelle or chinkara, which is the smallest. So these are the 4 antelopes. Antelopes have horns. Deer have antlers. Horns in antelope are more permanent. Antlers in deer are temporary. Horns do not branch. Antlers in deer branch. Horns are hollow, porous. Antlers are solid. For their size, they are much heavier in weight as compared to the horns of the antelopes. So these are the main differences that one can look at and you should know. Cow, buffalo, they have horns, okay, whereas deer have antlers. This is the commonest monkey found all over India. It's called as the bonnet macaque. In English, bonnet means a cap or a hat which has a brim. Cars have a bonnet, which means a cap in front. Okay. Look at the eyebrows shedding the shadow on the eyes. That is the cap that the bonnet macaque has. Okay. It's the commonest of the monkey found in India. If you go to Mahabaleshwar, Mathiran, these monkeys are a menace because they learn all the tricks of looting people and so on. A cat which has become highly adapted to the city life, and that is a leopard. There is an entire group working with Sanjay Gandhi National Park, and called Mumbaikars for SGNP. What they are telling people is that you can't avoid the leopard, you have to start living with the leopard. When people come and say, oh, we are staying at Hiranandani and leopards have entered into our compound and it's a big problem for our children, they can't play at sunset, I tell them, you are at fault. If you buy a house in Hiranandani, that area originally belonged to the leopard. That was their original territory. They used to roam around there, and now you have to suffer. So start living with the leopard around your areas. So the Mumbaikar for SGNP have got a whole lot of rules, regulations, and norms and etiquettes which people can follow by living in those areas where leopards are quite common. For a grown-up person, leopard is never a problem. But if you are crouching, if you are squatting, if it's a small child, then the leopard identifies such a small thing as a dog and so may attack. To avoid such attacks, we need to understand the rules and regulations. So that's a leopard. This picture in Madumalai that I had photographed, this is a herd of elephant in Madumalai Wildlife Sanctuary, 333 square kilometers of thick, luxuriant forest. If you take a vehicle from Mysore to Uti, you pass through Madumalai. And back in my college days, they used to allow trekking. And this is a beautiful picture of the elephants. A lot of elephants which were tuskers. Now there is a genetic breed of tusk-less elephants, elephants without tusks, males without tusks. These are called Makana, and Makanas are genetic. They breed into more of elephants without tusk. Scientists are saying that if the elephants with tusk will not have a chance to mate with females, then more and more of the elephants without the tusk, Makanas, will have a chance to mate, and slowly the population will become more and more of Makana, which means the elephants without tusks. So this is a big problem in all the elephant territories of India, where tuskers are being poached, are being illegally killed for the tusk trade that is happening everywhere. Golden langur, a fantastic example. I'll come back. Yeah, golden langur, a fantastic example of a langur which was discovered just as recently as 1930s by a nature lover called E.P. Gee. E.P. Gee was a Britisher and he discovered this langur in the northeast part of India, and therefore the scientific name, the species name is Gee, after the scientist who discovered this golden langur. It's seen in Manas Wildlife Sanctuary. I had the privilege of seeing it there. But an animal which I have not been able to see is this snow leopard here. I have yet to see it. I was supposed to go in February this year, but because of COVID and Corona all across the world, my trip I had to cancel. And so I believe that in next year, February, I'll be able to see this snow leopard. It's again one of the animals which is endangered because of climate change, global warming, and snow receding in the Himalaya, because of which many species of animals will be affected. And yeah, this is a big problem. Black buck, as I told you earlier, this is an antelope. These are the females of the black buck. Gaur, mistakenly called as Indian bison. They can grow up to about 4.5, 5 feet at shoulder, and can weigh almost 1,400 to 1,500 kilos in weight, 1.4 tons. In a sanctuary or a national park or a Project Tiger Reserve, I never walk if there are one of these three animals in the forest: elephants, gaur, and bear. These three animals are unpredictable creatures. for their own safety, for their own protection, they can attack without any provocation because they feel their life is in danger. You don't have to be afraid of tigers, leopards, and so on. But these three creatures, you got to be very careful. Sloth bear, uh, again on the 10th of May, it was the World International Bear Day, and we conducted a series of talks through Sanctuary on the sloth bear and the other bears that we have in the world, 8 species of bears. And here's the wild species. So buffalo is one. Okay, bison belongs to the buffalo family, which we don't have in India. But buffalo family that we have in India is a wild buffalo seen in the northeast and in the Indravati river basin of central part of India. So what is gaur? Gaur is related to cow. So you know the difference between cow and buffalo, gai or bhaise. That is the difference between gaur and buffalo. So this is a wild buffalo. And here is the iconic species of the Northeast, the great Indian one-horned rhino. Right from the time of Akbar, in his Akbarnama, Akbar has written that the rhino is not related to the elephant, it is related to the horses. And why so? That's because rhino is a hoofed mammal, ungulate, and horses are also hoofed. Rhinos are becoming lesser and lesser in number. We have West Bengal, Assam, a couple of more northeastern states, and Nepal, which has the rhino population in the largest of the numbers. A beautiful animal, again endangered because the rhino horn is sold in the international market for its weight in gold. There is a very stupid misunderstanding. Human beings have this problem. Anything which is large, anything which is huge, must be having some part of the body which can give you the same vigor and stamina as that animal. So all our automobiles are compared, all our two-wheelers are compared with horsepower. Horsepower because of the power of the horses that they are comparing with, which is quite stupid. So you don't eat the meat of the horse to get the horsepower. You buy a vehicle to get that horsepower. In the same way, the rhino horn is sold in the international market because some stupid misbelief is there that if you eat powdered horn, you get the same stamina and vigor of the rhino. It's quite strange, and one must not believe in all these stupid things which are floated around in the world. So yes, we need to protect wildlife. I'm showing you a rosy picture of the animals around because my talk is based on the wonders of the wildlife. So all the wonderful things I need to show you. But yes, along with that, I have also shown you how this wildlife is in danger, how animals such as this Nilgiri tahr is also in danger because people are hunting, killing, poaching. Illegal trade of these animals is resulting in the wildlife being lesser and lesser in number. Look at this rhino in which the horn is cut. You saw the earlier rhino was in nature. Here this rhino is in a zoo where they cut the horn so that people will not steal the rhino from the zoo also. This lion-tailed macaque, in some old beliefs that are there, people believe that you can get a medicine by boiling this lion-tailed macaque and making it into a medicine. It can serve as a medication for paralysis or joint pain. Now these are all stupid misbeliefs and misunderstandings that you must eradicate. There are natural medicines, there are plant-based medicines, which one can think of, which one can talk about, rather than depending on these animals, because this is the reason why animals become endangered. And we need to let more and more people understand that please don't believe in such misunderstanding, myths, and misbeliefs because of which the animals are endangered. Today, the lions which are found only in Gujarat, earlier found only in Gir Wildlife Sanctuary and National Park. Fortunately now, the lions are increasing their distribution. Earlier years, it was only 2000 square kilometers in which there were about 280 lions. Today, lions are occupying almost 20,000 square kilometers of area, and we have more than 400 lion individuals out there. People have learned. There are villages in which outside the village, the lions are resting during daytime in bushes, trees. In the night time, these lions enter the village. They pick up a buffalo, a sheep, a goat, a cow, and people have no problem at all. They get compensation from the forest department. And here is where they say that, okay, the lion is one of the vehicles of our gods and goddesses, and so we must respect them, and so on. Fortunately, no big catastrophe has happened in Gujarat. I hope we don't have to wait for the day. And so I will end here by saying that this slide, which I have taken in Kanha, in the sweltering heat in May end, that's when the tiger color fur of the color of the tiger is just like the leaves which are dry. Again, these leaves are of that Shoria robusta. In the extremely dry condition, when it is 46, 48 degrees outside, that's when the tiger can just sit there and enjoy being camouflaged in this beautiful orange background. And so, fortunately, the tigers in some of the places are safe. We need to understand how we need to look at every role of wildlife, the beauty of wildlife, the interesting things about wildlife, and talk to people about it so that more and more generations can take the benefit and the advantage of the beauty, the wonder of wildlife around us. But do talk about the problems which are there, because if these problems keep on increasing, there will be no wildlife left, there will be no forest left, there will be no grassland left. Unfortunately, people think that grasslands are wastelands, and that is how the bustard, the Great Indian bustard, is also at danger. So Google out and see how each wildlife, which is iconic species in India, is at a threat, is endangered because of some idiotic developmental project. Try and go into the details of the development project, because only then you can have a valid answer. If somebody asks you, why should the dam not be made? You cannot say, oh, I don't know, and so on. You need to have valid answers. So with these valid answers, you'll be able to argue about your substantiating the point that why wildlife and forests and ecosystems where these wildlife live, they need to be saved. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. Please put your questions. I'm sure some of you have already placed these questions out there. So,
Thank you, sir, so much for that lovely talk. Uh, right from the biomes of India to the various animals in India, right from a bee up to a tiger, all of them were really fascinating. I hope there will be some questions. Anyone who has a question, please put in your questions.
would love to hear about the earliest memories of nature and wildlife. Uh, wow. So, in 1981, when I went to the Nanaj Wildlife Sanctuary, which is only 100 kilometers away from Solapur, I could see the Great Indian bustards out there. Today, not a single bustard is seen there. The Sanjay Gandhi National Park, it was a living laboratory for us. We could walk in every morning. I remember in 1984, 1982, when I joined Bhavans College, in the morning, I would go at 7:30 to the National Park gate, walk into the gate of the National Park, see some birds, see some animals for 1 hour, come back and take lectures in Bhavans College. I used to have a student who used to pick me up from Kandivali Fatak in 1983-84. He used to drive me only on a two-wheeler. At that time, it was no entry ticket, nothing to pay at the gate. We used to enter into the national park, go at the base of Kaneri Caves in the month of April and May. I used to imitate the call of the Trogon, the Malabar Trogon. See the Malabar Trogon, be very happy. In those days, we had no mobiles, no cameras, nothing. But with my voice, I could imitate the call of the Trogon. This is 1984, 85, 86. See the Trogon, come back to Bhavan's College and take lectures and practicals. So this is how nature and wildlife was literally a lot. I think we have lost, I would say, anything between 30% and 60% of wildlife in several places. We have literally lost from the 1980s. In the last 50 years that I am talking about, we have lost. So yes, you all should not be losing the possibility. You should not have only photographs to show your children that this is the tiger that was there in our days. Now you can only see photographs. So this should not be the kind of experience that you have. And because of that, you need to save right from spider till the tiger. I've told you the correlation and the connection. You have a lot of places. There is an entire action plan which has been drawn up called as nature needs half. What do you mean by nature needs half? One species, Homo sapiens, one species can occupy half of the earth, leave the other half for all the other species on this earth. All the other species. Can you imagine? That is what is nature needs half. So save the other places for other wildlife. We can easily do that in India. The unfortunate thing is that we are not identifying the half that is to be saved for nature. How can one start exploring the wild India and also think of research? So number one, mind you, I am from a middle class family. Okay. I also lived in Sion in a small 2-room house, 3-room house. That's it. You don't need a lot of money to explore nature. There are so many places which one can visit. Karnala National Park, Airoli, BPT, forests around Uran, and so on. You need to spend only your travel expense. By looking at wildlife, you can see so many wild things. Forget about that. Our own gardens around you have so many species of insects, butterflies, birds, and so on. I'm 100% sure a single person in SIS students will not be able to identify all the birds outside your window. I'm 100% sure. You people are lucky. 50 years ago, we did not have e-books, e-guides, and internet to solve our problem. For any bird that we saw, we had to go to the BNHS library. Oh, we saw a green bird with a long tail in the center of the tail. We don't know what it is. I think it was a parakeet. No, in those days, we didn't even know the difference between a parrot and a parakeet. I'm sure many of you don't. So this is how start exploring your garden, your towns, your small places which you have around. Start identifying them. Aditya sir and other resource people will share e-books with you. Be a part of the e-groups. Okay. There are so many e-groups on butterflies, birds, snakes, beetles, dragonflies, any plants. Oh, wow. I mean, outside your window, you have so many flowering trees right now. Again, as I said, you'll not be able to identify all of them. So this is how you can start. Don't worry, you will never become an expert. After 50 years, I still have students who ask me for identifying birds and animals and so on. I don't know all these plants and birds and animals. If somebody asks me about a bird, I will put it to Pranad, I will put it to Saurabh Sawant, I will put it to XYZ. If somebody talks about reptiles, I put it to Varun Satose, I put it to Zishan. If somebody asks about frogs, I put it to Varadgiri and so on. We don't have to be experts. There are experts in all the fields. In every field, there are experts. Ask them. Don't be 100% sure. Don't wait to become an expert. But with whatever knowledge you have, A, start studying. B, start looking at their problems. C, Look at small scientific studies that you can do. This is research. Research does not mean a big scientific survey and a research proposal and so on and so forth. You can just look at small things in your garden and make your own research proposal. Okay? Don't get locked up in laboratories. Look at wildlife outside, because that's where majority of the discoveries are lying. More discoveries have been done in gardens than in forests, mind you. So start looking at your garden as a living laboratory to do research. Look at small things, small research projects. It could be study of a butterfly life cycle, of some things which are present, of alkaloids which are present, of plant-based extracts. I mean, if somebody shows me a plant, I can tell 100 or 1,000 kind of research projects which one can think. So research is not something which is out of your syllabus or outside your own terrain. Arts students, commerce students, you can also do research. Don't think that you need science background to do research. Okay? You can publish a small paper about your own discovery. Maybe you can find out something which science is. Sometimes, science is blinded with scientific knowledge. Then you need somebody who has common sense. And sometimes arts and commerce students have more common sense than science students. So if you look at anything which is around you, what is research? Research means an inquisitive mind. Okay, so go out with your inquisitive mind and look at anything possible and develop your own proposal, your own research project, and so on. How students can contribute towards conservation? Yes, as I said, today everything is being published on social media. Okay, don't just be on Facebook following your own friends and relatives. Follow e-groups, follow people who are into science and conservation. Follow people who are into communities. I was a scientist initially. Later on, my mind opened towards communities. Now I am doing research on communities and their livelihoods. What is the meaning? If there is a tribal community in the Northeast, and if this community does not get any money by saving wildlife, that means biodiversity, then the community will not be interested in saving the biodiversity. Simple calculation. So we are looking at social sciences, we are looking at endemic communities, we are looking at endemic ethnic tribes, people who are into these sensitive zones. We are trying to save them. We are trying to look at alternatives in livelihood which we can create for them so that these people can save. I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, when my ex-student Shashank Dalvi, Pranad's batchmate, and Bikram Grewal went into the Northeast and looked at the entire problem of Amur falcon being killed by these people, what happened? Slowly, they thought of alternative livelihoods to these people. Okay. And through that, they started looking at how these people can be told that rather than eating the falcon, if you save the falcon, more people will come as tourists to look at these falcon. You will earn more money by saving the falcon because of tourism than by killing and eating the falcon. Such a simple equation. So this is how biodiversity can be saved, by making people responsible for saving the biodiversity, by making the community responsible for saving the biodiversity. Only in that way, people and wildlife can coexist, and people will save the wildlife for getting more money, for getting livelihood, and that's how the biodiversity can be saved. Why not think about a course in ecology or biodiversity? Yes, we have already started this course in Bhavan's College. I was a part of the committee, 5-member committee, which made this course, and we are running this course in Bhavan's College called MSc in Biodiversity, Wildlife Conservation and Management. All these people like Aditya, like your other teachers, they all come and teach at this course. Whatever knowledge they have in wildlife, they all share with us there. And it's all an integrated course looking at wildlife and managing wildlife and studying about wildlife and so on. Is there any other question that needs to be on? Yeah. So continue with your interest in wildlife. Don't let it die, but don't become an armchair naturalist. Okay.
Any more questions? Okay. It was a fascinating lecture by Pandya sir. To start with biomes, biodiversity, diversity in India, the number of species in India. From there, it took up to the smallest of the animals which are there. And as sir rightly said, that tiger is just an umbrella species under which we are covering and conserving so many different other species. And which is the most important thing. Unless and until we conserve the rest of the species, the tiger is not going to survive. It was such a wonderful talk, inspiring talk by Banda sir, and I hope it was really good, motivating talk by our mentor to start with this series. We are going to have a lot many other lectures. Some of them are already there here, as sir mentioned, Zishan, Pranat Patil, Varun Satose. All of these guys are going to talk to you people regarding various aspects of wildlife conservation and also careers in wildlife. So stay tuned for a lot of good lecture series, and we'll see you tomorrow, day after tomorrow. We'll pass on to you the link for the meeting, which is day after tomorrow. It is by Ninad, again, Pandya sir student. He did his MSc under Pandya sir, and we are going to have a session on camera trapping by him. So thank you, Pandya sir, so much for this wonderful talk and inspiring the students.
Pleasure.
And I
Please
hope
share the talk, and so that others who have not been able to attend can, if you can put it on YouTube, that will be the best, so that I can also share the link.
okay, okay, sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
sure,
Great.
sure, sure. Thank you,
Great.
sir. Thank you so much.
Most
And
welcome.
all of you, please, there is a link for the Google form for all those who are attending here. Please do fill up the Google form which is there, which is shared with all of you. Thank you so much, and have a nice day, everyone. And stay safe, stay home.